Well, hi and welcome to our Tuesday midday stand. If you've been following us this week, you will know that we're in a series on God's provision. And this morning, Rachel unpacked for us a little bit about the supply chain of God and reflected on my God who supplies. And I want to pick up one of the verses that she mentioned. And if you were with me yesterday, you'll know that I've just felt moved this week to do a little word study on some of the words in the scriptures that Rachel highlights for us. So the little word study I want to do today is on that word supply and what it means. Philippians 4 and verse 19 says this: "My God will supply all your needs according to his riches in glory." And I did a bit of a study on that word to supply that God uses here. And it's the little Greek word plero or plerou. And it really means to make full, to fill up, to cause to abound, to furnish or supply liberally, to abound and liberally supply in every way. And I looked up to see if that was common in other verses where supply is used. For example, 2 Corinthians 9 and verse 10, another of the scriptures that Rachel used. "Now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply," and then it amplifies, "and multiply your seed for sowing to increase your harvest." So there's this little principle when you see that word supply in especially the New Testament, but in the scriptures talking about the provision of God. And inherent within God's provision is not just to supply just about enough so that we survive, but that actually something about the heart and generosity and character of God is that he supplies in abundance, that there's always an abundant provision with God. So with our mentality, perhaps, we sort of think, well, I've heard about such and such a need, I will give what I can, but we limit that giving to what we feel we can afford, which is totally legitimate, or we limit it to what we feel is humanly enough, in inverted commas. But with God, the mindset is, I will give you what you need and an abundance on top of what you need. So God, when he says I will supply, always means I will supply more than enough. God's ultimate destination is abundance. God's ultimate journey for us is to go, as Rachel said, from the land of not enough, where we have a lack, where we have a need, and then take us through a journey of learning the process of his supply and provision, and ending up in that land of not just I've got just about enough and I'm surviving, but ending up in that place of plenty, or in the Greek plerou, that fullness. You reflect on other scriptures when God says, I give you life, and I don't just give you a life where you survive, but I give you fullness of life, or life in abundance, life truly maximized. It's like the heart of God cannot contain his generosity. So when he supplies in abundance. But we do have to go on that journey. And in the process, we learn about what our God is like. I don't know what your experience of someone's provision for you has been. Maybe you grew up in a situation where there was lack, there was need, there was just about enough. And we can easily come to a mindset of, well, I don't need much. I'll just have what I can survive on. I just have just about enough. As long as I can survive, I'm okay. And there is something about being content in any circumstance. Paul says, I've learned to be content with lack, and I've learned to be content with a lot. And I'm content in any given circumstance. But there's a difference between contentment when we're going through the tough seasons and our understanding of what the true heart of God is. And I think this is a day when we are in that wrestle for faith, to know that even though maybe each one of us is going through those questions about, will I have enough? Will the paychecks come in? Will the job be there at the end of this coronavirus? What is going to go on? Will my God provide and supply? And we need to not think and limit our understanding of our God in terms of our human experience, but limit it to, or expand it to, the true reflection of what God says when he says, I want to be your supply and your provider. And that is a God who is a God of abundance. And he gives abundantly because he wants us to become a conduit of his blessing, a channel of his blessing to others. When he gives seed to the sower, he says, I want to multiply that seed so that if you invest it, you will end up with a mega harvest. God is looking after us today, not just for our sakes, although he loves us, but also because when he gives us and pours into our lives, if we will open up our hands and give liberally, he will make us channels of his abundance to others as well. And our very lives showing that provision, showing that supply of God in abundance, showing that we have not just enough but more than enough, will become a testimony to others around us that with God nothing is impossible. And as you know, that with the measure that we use, it is measured back to us. And Rachel will be picking up that scripture tomorrow. But I just want to reflect on the fact that God's measure is always more than enough. I love the fact that he measures to us, asks us to use a measure, but then somehow in his economy it multiplies back. But tune in tomorrow for a little bit more from Rachel on that one as she unpacks that graciousness of God in helping us to learn how his supply and economy work. Come back tomorrow. See you then. Take care.